Awesome. Yeah, this panel I'm really excited about having you guys. We tried to get Watson, but Watson was busy, so we got Noah Syken from IBM.
Close.
Yeah, you can do an impersonation, I think, if we need. Amir, for folks who don't know WSC, if you've watched a highlight on the internet, there's a good chance WSC created that highlight and delivered it to you, helped deliver it to you. And if you've made a bet in your life, there's a good chance you've done it on DraftKings. So these folks, I think, are a perfect trio to discuss AI because at their heart, these are three AI companies in a lot of ways, even if you don't think of them that way. And more companies are becoming AI companies as AI infiltrates itself more and more into sports business. You've probably heard the term 100 times today, if not more. But this is the panel to actually talk about it. So we're excited to dive into it. And I do want to start there, and I can throw this to you, Noah. Why is everyone talking about AI right now?
Wow, that's a good question. Speaking from where we sit, we've been focused on AI for more than a decade. But I think the reality is that people can now touch it. People can now get real value out of it on a personal level. And that sparks people's imagination. I'm a sports card collector. I sell some cards on eBay. Right now, if you go on eBay, you try to sell a card, there's a little button that says, write a description for this card. Touch My Life saves me time. So anything that touches people on a personal level, I think starts to spark their imagination. I think in the last 9 months, 12 months, people have had visceral experiences with AI that have kind of triggered their imagination.
And touch on that a little bit more, Amir. What's new here? Because like you were saying, all of you guys have been AI focused for 3 years, 5 years, 10 years longer. Why in the last 9 months is everybody else AI focused?
As Noah mentioned, I think the start with consumer being able to start using ChatGPT, Midjourney, a lot of different tools that people are starting to play with for their own personal things to do, writing emails, writing birthday cards, and so on and so forth. That's becoming now, it's a real thing. You and I talked about it before. I think what happened with generative AI in the last year and OpenAI development with their own models, it's the equivalent, the way I see it, to when iOS came in, the App Store was there. Now there's so many abilities, things that I can go and develop that I couldn't do before. There's going to be some shitty things that no one want to use, and there's going to be things that are going to change our life. Yeah. So I think the first thing that we're seeing that's changing our life is ChatGPT for the people who are actually using it. For some graphic designers, might be Midjourney and other stuff. So those things are going to keep developing and being impacting our day-to-day. And that's the biggest thing, and now also in sports.
No, I love the App Store comparison because, like you said, when the App Store came out, the best-selling app, I think, was like a fart app. And the second best-selling app was like an app that made you pretend you were pouring beer. And the third best app was probably just as stupid as those two. Are we in that moment still? Like, where are we on the spectrum of fart app to life-changing app when it comes to generative AI?
I think we're seeing the spectrum of checking trends. There's going to be things that are going to be super, super trendy as we see it, and there's some of them going to stick. I think hard to find like an example, but there were so many things when you thought was trendy that became just something part of our lives. So it's going to happen, and it's going to happen in sports. There's going to be a lot of features and things we're going to start doing that are like gimmicky, that people are going to think it's really, really cool. And there's going to be things that we're not going to even feel that's going to be becoming our part of a day-to-day. So I think we're still in the gimmicky part, and people are still starting to work towards what actually sticking.
Yeah, I think we're probably further away from the fart than we think. I think the application...
It's a good place to be, yeah.
That came out wrong. I think enterprises are adopting AI at scale for real substantial tasks. Like we talk a lot about the application. How are people using AI today? People who are writing code to develop, digital experiences, they're using AI to create that code today. And so I think it depends on what part of the community you're talking about. Mm-hmm. I'm sure there's a lot of fun things that are very frivolous going on, but from a enterprise standpoint, AI is in full adoption right now.
Yeah, it's that accessibility, I think, because you don't have to be a top tier tech company anymore to get started in AI. There's AI that creates AI, so it's sort of it multiplies on itself, and I think for most companies, can take advantage of it without even realizing that they're getting involved in data science and machine learning and AI. So I think that's why, I think that's why it gets anyone in the space really excited.
Yeah. So let's dive into that. Like for each of you, maybe start on your end and come back down. How are you using AI right now? What are the ways in which it's improving, the DraftKings product?
Yeah, so my group, I lead a division we call Sports Intelligence, which is really using data science and analytics and ML, machine learning algorithms to predict what's going to happen next in a game. And obviously, that's very germane to the whole product. We need an idea of probability of certain things happening in the game in order to offer betting on that game. So AI, machine learning, data science has been foundational to DraftKings for since the start of the company. But now with the dawn of sports betting, it became one of the products that we were selling. So.
Do you think that's the differentiator between the betting companies, like the ability to use that? Like that's what's going to define the good versus the mediocre ones? Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, our objective is to figure out what we think the true probability is of something happening, and that's constantly evolving. Like that model of what it is constantly changing. The game constantly changes. Like a model of the NBA from 10 years ago, probably not really valuable. The data from 10 years ago, probably not really valuable because the game has changed so much. And even we talked a little bit about the NFL. I mean, just the sheer number of plays that you've seen in the NFL over the last 20 years is actually relatively small compared to the amount of data that OpenAI used to build ChatGPT. It's really taking advantage of AI is about the people that you have, is about building a good team that can constantly keep up. I think I'm sure you guys see your team's work, and it's not about the models. It's not about the model that you have or the predictive or the thing you're trying to predict, but it's about the team being able to constantly update that and keep it relevant.
No, so for you, I think IBM this year, AI has been part of your company for 5, 10, 15 years. I think in sports, you guys did something this year, starting with the Masters, that a lot of people pointed to as this is an example of what generative AI can do. You want to walk through what that was and the amount of time and work that went into bringing that to life?
I would go back a little bit.
Please.
So, probably 8, 10 years ago, we were rolling out AI-powered chatbots at sporting events. And so we've been on this journey over time, and we've been capturing data in new ways and creating experiences in new ways using AI. And one of the things we struggle with or think about is just because you can do it doesn't mean you should do it. And I heard a variety of different people say there's going to be more data on screens, more overlays, more graphics, all these kinds of things. And that's all fine, but is there any evidence that anybody wants that or that it's adding any value? And so that's, I think, something we often think about as content producers, content creators. At the Masters, we rolled out our AI commentary feature, right? So we had been creating AI commentary highlights, literally scoring every shot taken at the Masters for years, every shot based on crowd noise, the position of the golfer in the tournament, a variety of different factors. But when we started doing that, the challenge was we were capturing every shot on every hole, and there was a lot of quiet golf. Because every shot on every hole does not have a commentator. And the Masters basically said, how can you add a little bit of color, a little bit of richness around that? And we turned to generative AI. We turned to our Watson X platform to generate that commentary. And it's the early days. There's going to be a lot that gets developed on top of that. We did the same thing at the US Open, along with great partners and collaborators. And there's a lot of interest in what kind of voices are we bringing to the US Open or any one of these events? Should there be a New York voice, right? And so how do you use AI to create new experiences, but also use the capabilities underneath that to create more richer experiences that are more tuned to the particular audiences and events?
So from WSC perspective, we are an AI company. That's our core. Everything we do was in the foundation and fundamentals of our technology has been using AI. So our ability to identify actions on the screen, the box scores, noises, any data that we can take and make decision out of it. So we're training our models to be able to understand every sport, what is basketball actually means, how a highlight should look, how a player highlight should look, what stuff we should be doing. So we're training our models all the time to improve those things. And obviously when sports evolves, we need to keep training our models. So for example, with soccer, a few years ago, we started with the VAR, the VAR, change our game highlights completely, because now you start like making decision, how the system needs to understand what is VAR, what do you need to show in a highlight, do you need to show the referee going to the screen, do you need to show the actual play that caused it. So there's a lot of decision making into this, but in our core, everything that we do is powered by AI. And obviously when generative right now is coming in, it's going to be in our core to be able to create those things that are focused on generative.
Perfect. Yeah, and those are awesome examples of how you guys are using AI now. So now I want to change it to what excites you about how you might use AI. And we'll start on this side and go back down. And I'm curious, especially on that last point, are there new types of data sets that you guys can build or leverage with AI that you couldn't until now?
Yeah, I think in terms of the data sets that are out there, there is obviously ones that we're not even recognizing. I think you talked about it before. Back in the day, we didn't even know that sound can be a data that we can use. Today, it's like, obviously you can use the commentary and doing NLP and other stuff. So, looking at animals on the screen or key scams or arrivals and things that we don't necessarily analyze today to be able to analyze this. But from a generative AI perspective, it's how you're going to be able to use it to create what we are calling like the sports model. Today, when you go to Midjourney or you want to do something with ChatGPT and you're going to talk about sport, so they're not trained good enough to actually be able to produce a good result. It's going to be, if you want to look for a Messi, you want to create a Midjourney, a Messi photo, it's going to look something in the past. It doesn't understand the context because it's too broad. So generative in sports is going to need to be trained in a specific sports specific, and you're going to be able to create things out of it. And it's going to be the AI commentary that people are doing. It's going to be other stuff around like articles and so on and so forth. So.
And Noah, you talked about kind of the work that went into that master's project, which you guys have since rolled out. Also, what is on the roadmap now? What's the next thing for you that you're trying to solve with this?
Yeah, well, the roadmap's always evolving, that's for sure. But the integration of video, we've taken structured data feeds and now integrating video into that and creating new experiences with those video for the athletes themselves. From an operational standpoint, the venues. I think there's some opportunity to optimize how venues operate, how the retail operations flow, how their patrons get across the site. So I think there's any number of applications from a venue, from an athlete, from an operational standpoint. But I think for us, we're going to focus a lot on content. How do we help the content operations be more efficient? Because that's really what a lot of our sports partners are challenged with. They have very small teams, and they're looking for productivity measures to create more content, monetize that content, and all the content's perishable, so speed to market's incredibly important.
Yeah, and for us, it's really exciting to think about the amount of data that we're still only scratching the surface, and the amount of data that we could still get access to or receive in real time to understand what moves the game, what moves the different sports, what influences a win, what influences momentum, because these are important for us to be able to predict what's going to happen next. There's been so much by way of player tracking data, and so we're really still only dealing with stat lines, things you see on the field. Things that can be easily observed, but as we move into this sort of next generation of stats and data collection, and improve the speed at which we can see the quarterback's heart rate at any given time. We know, is he cool right now? Is he collected, or is he getting nervous about the game? Like that could be something from a stat nerd perspective. You can analyze and you could judge who's the most cool under pressure. So that kind of being able to again, just from like understanding the games, a lot of the innovation, a lot of this innovation is coming first in the communities and in the teams. Teams doing analytics on their own players, and that's where a lot of the innovation is coming from. So it's really cool to see just how that's developing and how we might be able to use it in the future.
Yeah, and I love those examples and thoughts, 'cause I think they point to kind of a misunderstanding about how y'all are thinking about using AI, how sports are thinking about using AI, because in each case, right, it's about improving the product, personalizing the product, creating more, faster, things like that. It's not about replacing the people who are already doing this work, right? Or have you managed to cut some staff with AI?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's there's so much about a live sporting event that, you know, we're still, yeah, we aren't capturing in the data, and we have no you know, we have no chance at capturing probably anytime soon. You know, in in the moment, you know, Aaron Rodgers goes down. Apologies to anybody if that's an open wound. You know, our team, you know, the data didn't indicate that he wasn't going to come back for that game, or, you know, come back for the season. But, you know, our team in the room watching the video feed, you know, they knew this was a bad injury. And so that's, you know, that's human in the loop. That's capturing things. And so what really we aim to do with AI is to free those people up and free those teams up to do more interesting work that they're uniquely qualified to judge, you know, qualitatively.
And Noah, you touched on that too, but just the size. I think a lot of sports organizations I talk to, you know, there's usually somebody who works in an innovation role or data role, and like, yeah, there's really cool stuff going on, but I need to sell tickets to Friday's game. I need to, you know, make the bottom. I need to pay these salaries. Like, you know, I don't have the time or the resources or the team to go off and experiment with these crazy solutions. So that's obviously where you guys step in to some degree, but what role does AI play for those companies?
Yeah, look, we think that we're able to augment the existing capabilities of the organization by adding, you know, new value. And we also think that about filling in the white space. So we talked about commentary at the Masters, at the US Open, which just finished up here. We were adding commentary to highlights for the outer courts, right? There's 17 courts going on simultaneously. Only 3 have commentary. John McEnroe can't be at every court. Well, commentary can be available to everybody who wants those matches. So that's pure white space where we have an opportunity to add value. We're not taking a commentator's job away. We're actually adding something to the event that's hopefully valuable.
No, it makes total sense. And I think that is another thing of like, look, you know, when I was prepping for this panel, I was like, oh, it would be a great idea to open with like a ChatGPT generated question. You know, that'd be like a fun little bit. People would laugh at that. And I did it, and the questions all sucked. And I was not going to ask any of those questions because people would have been asleep if I got halfway through this very long, you know, verbose question that answered itself midway through and didn't make any sense by the final quarter. So I think where AI has the biggest benefits is, like you were saying, raising the floor on stuff at scale, right? We can do 100 things decently now. We still can't do the best thing as good as the person who recognizes that that's an Achilles tear, but we can monitor 1,000 different matches around the world and recognize. And so that obviously comes into play for you guys with highlights. So what are you guys able to do more of? What are you willing to trust machines to do more of now and expand kind of the operations on?
It's a good question. I think it's more from the highlights perspective or content perspective is actually the fans and what they're looking for.
Yeah. What are they looking for?
Which is also evolving. So, you know, in the last few years, we're seeing more and more vertical content.
Mm-hmm.
Cropping a video and making it vertical in sports, it's not an easy thing. It can take hours sometimes. So being able to use AI, being able to use generative to be able to start like cropping it, building it up. So that's kind of something new we've been seeing last year, and we're doing more and more. So apps like the PGA Tour, NBA, La Liga in Europe is all saying like we need to be in this game because people are on social, used to doing reels and seeing vertical, and then they go to our app is like going back to Craigslist. So basically,
no offense to Craigslist if they're in the room.
No,
I don't know.
It is what it is. So they wanted also to be able to offer vertical within sports. So that's kind of like was a big change. So suddenly you also have horizontal, you have vertical. So those things are growing. I'm going to see more and more content, even like stuff that, I don't know if you guys seen the ESPN Big City Greens, right? So there's like the same game. It's now animated. It's another type of content. So those things are going to start evolving more and more, and we need to be there. So
I think that gets to something else I'm really curious for each of you guys. This is kind of an AI question, but also a broader operational question. How do each of you think about balancing experimental R&D? You know, like you were saying, let's create this kind of new mid-journey for sports product with there's a small problem one of my partners wants to solve by Friday, and we can use this tool to do that. Like, do you have separate long-term and short-term teams? Do you have separate days of the week that you're dedicating to these things? How are you balancing, we want to create something that's going to be really cool in 3 years, and we want to make our partners happy tomorrow?
If someone has a good answer, let me know. It's been.
I'll take a crack. So IBM has I think the largest private research facility organization in the world, and we very much focus on how do we bring the best of that research facility out of the lab, but also sell, let's just call it, the stuff off the back of the truck. And so we want to be able to do both. So as an example, quantum computing. Quantum is pretty much on the edge right now. We started to run quantum algorithms on top of our fantasy football predictions. That's not something that necessarily has broad application today, but it's a great demonstration of how quantum can improve performance. So for us and for our partners in particular, we like to bring the things that are kind of on the cutting edge to excite their imagination, but we also want to deliver tried and true products that we can sell to customers as well.
How's your fantasy team doing is what he's asking. This is a rare chance to talk about your own fantasy team.
I was a little distracted during my draft, but predictions are pretty good.
Yeah.
They're incrementally better than non-quantum based algorithms. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm awful at fantasy, for what it's worth. But I think
how are you balancing long-term, potential benefits with unclear short-term?
Yeah. Again, it goes back to the people we hire. We hire the types of analysts, data scientists, engineers who get excited about this stuff. We have sort of like hackathons, and we allow for a lot of engineering input into the product roadmap, and a lot of the best ideas have come out of the engineering group just through experimentation. It's always a give and take. But I think if you hire good people, they're going to come up with good ideas, and you give them the space to just develop those ideas, and good things come out of it.
Can take a crack from the smallest R&D, probably.
Small but mighty.
Yeah, we're still in a startup mode. We are 450 people globally, so it's different sizes, and we need to be. We play all the time with focus versus opportunity, and how we balance this. So there's some stuff that we are saying, this is going to be a focus because, as an example, we believe in generative AI. We understand why it's going to be a focus, so we are going to build a dedicated team. The same thing was about the in-app stories and the vertical. We understood, but both of them came from an opportunity that we needed to analyze to say this will become a focus. And then you start to balance this. So in some matters like generative AI in-app stories, it's going to be a dedicated team you're building, and that's going to become their focus. A lot of other stuff we analyze as we go if this opportunity should be a focus, and how sometimes we're just putting resources of 2 weeks of a developer for sake of discussion. But that's how you start playing with the balance versus.
Yeah, I think that's super important for any company of any size, and we've always taken the approach that you have to identify the business value. Like if you're going to start investing in AI, if you're going to start investing in data science, if you're not, there's probably exceptions. A company like IBM who can take a lot more big swings at big ideas, but for a company like DraftKings, we identify business value. We make sure we kind of validate that it would work if we just hire enough people to do it. And then you automate, and then you bring in the AI, and then you optimize, and then you sort of make it smarter, make it better, make it more effective. So that's how we kind of approach all of our research and all of our development.
Yeah, similar question for you, Noah. I was going to ask, when do you decide this is a problem to bring the AI folks in on? This is something AI can help with versus any number of other tech solutions that you guys might have available.
I don't know if there's a particular point in time. It's a collaboration between our partners. They express needs and desires. We want to be able to deliver the most personalized experience in sport at the Masters. Great. Now, how do we do that? Start to capture every shot on every hole. Now you have that. What's the problem? There's no audio. We can use AI to solve that problem. So what are the objectives that we're trying to accomplish, and then what are the tools that we have in our tool chest to, and then sometimes we just have net new ideas that we want to bring to the table because we think it'll make a difference for their business. So it's kind of both ways.
Yeah. And along those lines, I'm curious where sports sits. I'm obsessed with the sports applications of this stuff, but you guys have to look elsewhere as well. How often, let's start here, how often are the stuff you're doing in sports trickling out, whether it's AI or otherwise, trickling out to other businesses?
All the time. It actually goes both ways. It's probably more appropriate to say the technology that we use for Fortune 500 companies is being used at the sports events than the other way around. The same security products, the same cloud infrastructure, the same AI algorithms to some extent are being used at the U.S. Open as in big banks, retailers, and insurance companies. And that's frankly why we're in the game, to help people understand that a big sporting event's I know it's an AI conversation, but big sporting event's a security target, just like a big bank is. And so if I can protect the U.S. Open, I can probably protect your bank as well.
And the flip side of that for you two guys, I'm curious, where do you look outside of sports to see what's happening in AI? What can we do? And how often are you bringing an idea that you see used outside and saying, oh, this has applications within sports?
Yeah, I think it came up in the broadcasting discussion, but gaming, just e-gaming, video games are tend to be on the cutting edge of this stuff. So a lot of the techniques they use for anything from video or gameplay mechanics, that's like a great place to be inspired for any consumer product. Really, they just tend to be on the bleeding edge of what's next.
Is there anything WSC is looking at? You mentioned Mid-Journey as an example, but is other things you're like, oh, we can bring this to sports?
I think everything within generative AI is at the moment it's happening outside of sport.
Right.
In as a whole. Obviously, there are specific use cases that are happening in sports, but so that's obviously a place we're looking into and saying where is our play within the sports. But I think every development we're doing, most of it is coming, from the open web and things that we analyze and explore, and we want to give the sports stake into it and how we're able to train our model using those technologies and development in different industries. So I would say that's happening all the time. I'll add that some people are going to say this is our Achilles heel, and I'm claiming this is one of the thing where we're good at. Out of those 450 people, the 95% are not coming with sports background or sports media background. We kind of staying naive into this industry, and help us come with a different mindset. We're learning a lot of things as we go. We're not coming and saying, hey, this is how it works, because we don't have this experience, and I think this is played up until now in our favor, and hopefully it's going to keep on happening. But that's kind of in general.
I was going to say, I think broadcasting in general is a great place because, those are the subject matter experts in sports and, been doing it the longest in terms of predicting or understanding the game. And so just hearing about, the way companies are able to take crowd noise and turn it into a data point, for me, that I learned that new today, and so thinking about how can we leverage that potentially.
Yeah, on that point, we can kind of move towards the resolution here, but I'm curious, there are people in this room who work at companies that don't have AI engineering teams, might not have engineering teams at all. What can sports companies do right now to best position themselves to take advantage of whatever next AI development comes out or model comes out or feature comes out, and how can they be prepared to take advantage of that when the time is right?
Embrace AI. I think it's the main thing that sports organization, in my opinion, need to do is just understand that fan consumption is changing, and they need to find ways to solve it. I don't say AI, that's the way, but it's just changing, and it is. And the ones going to stick to, we're only doing live sports within specific vertical and in some only horizontal and so on and so forth. They're gonna get stuck because it's just changing. It is what it is. So that's the main thing I'll say.
Well, they can call IBM. I mean, that was an easy question. If you have a problem, call IBM. I think
And when they call IBM, what's the first thing you tell them to do?
what's your mission critical problem? I mean, that's the conversation. What can we help you with? But I think more specifically, particularly some of the organizations we work with, maybe just are a little conservative or reluctant. Right? They've got a great business going, great fan base going. I would just encourage everybody to be get a little uncomfortable. You know, push into a space that you're not quite sure your business should go into. Start to experiment in ways that aren't going to hurt your core business. But I think we all know that the landscape's changing very, very rapidly around us, and so I just think you have to embrace that change and try some new things. And fail fast.
Right now, compared to 3 years ago, where are they in terms of embracing innovation and change and risk? Is it up? Is it down? Is it flat?
I mean, obviously, I can only speak to my partners. I'd say in the past 3 years, I might say we're close to 180% turn. 3 years is a strange time frame given where we were 3 years ago. But
4 years. That's what I was trying to avoid. But yeah, 4 years.
Without question, I think what's happened in the past year has really kind of shaken up a lot of our partners, and they're much more receptive and open to experimentation.
And when you say what's happened in the last year, you
just
mean?
with the generative AI boom, if you'll call it. Everybody waking up finally.
Yeah.
And just repeat, identify that business value, that challenge that you think you can solve with this, because AI data science has never been more accessible, and I think that was the big thing, like we said, that changed. So there's AI out there that will do the AI for you. So you can even.
And that sounds complicated, but that's as simple as typing in a chatbot, build me a model.
ChatGPT, build me a model that does this. Give it some data and just start experimenting to try to solve a business problem. And it can be a small one. It can,
like how to start a panel. Yeah.
Exactly. How to. And if you have a problem and you're able to prove some value, then that'll start something, I think, at any company.
Last question for any of you guys. I'm curious. This is your chance to speak to some people in sports business. What's the biggest misunderstanding about generative AI? What do you want to stop being asked about? What do you want to close the door on, shut the door, something that's not happening, it's not going to happen, whatever? What should we never be asked about again when it comes to generative AI?
I mean, I'll go back to the fact that it's not replacing people in their jobs. It's freeing them up to do solve more interesting problems that AI hasn't solved yet, and that's really exciting.
That's exactly what I was going to say. It's the most common.
That's why I went first.
Most common.
Challenge, and what this gentleman said over here, which is, how's that prediction? Is the prediction really good? Once you get into the prediction game, there's a lot that can come from that. And again, just because you should or can doesn't mean you should. And I think I'm always thinking about that a little bit.
Yeah. Awesome. Cool. Any other questions from the crowd?
Right now, I'm noticing that a lot of auto GPT, things like that, are limited by the number of loops that you have and tokens. Do you see AI becoming more like a utility with an analogy to like Akamai?
Yeah, so this is a great question too, because basically the question is this going to be table stakes where anybody, the model gets good enough that you can type in a box asking for a model to do X or Y or Z, and any company can do this, and all of a sudden you don't need a 100-person team to build a model, right? That's basically
You're limited. I mean, if you ask it to write a novel, it'll stop because auto, GPT is maxed at 25 loops, so you basically have 25 tasks. Beyond that, you either build your own or what do you do? So does it become more like a utility?
Right. Yeah. So what's your guys' sense on that? You guys each have your own AI models. Is it something that eventually there'll be an AI company that everybody's kind of using a little differently, or do you imagine these things staying in-house?
I don't know if I'm really the best person to answer that, but part of my understanding is that the cost of running the infrastructure has to come down dramatically in order for you to not be limited on those loops, right? So just like everything else in technology, as the cost to run the infrastructure comes down, it's going to be more accessible and it's going to be more utility-like.
So it sort of is like streaming, where it was prohibitively expensive in the late 90s, early aughts, and now it's...
Yeah, we already see a lot of the big data platforms, Databricks, the Snowflakes, the AWS, like already bringing that to the masses. It took OpenAI, $100 million to train GPT-4. We already see companies innovating and bringing that down so that it's, again, more accessible to normal companies.
Awesome. Well, our clock just hit 000, so I think that means we can all go get drinks, but we're going to have a few closing remarks before that. So I'm going to bring up my friend, Ben.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, I'm good.